The ship came out of hyperspace with a hard jolt that knocked Commander Daniel Harris against his seat. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Warning sounds filled the air. But Daniel kept his eyes on the main screen, where the biggest space station he had ever seen hung in the darkness like a metal moon. "Sir, we had arrived at the Galactic Tribunal," said Lieutenant Katie Morrison from her seat at the communications panel. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see her hands shaking a little. "I can see that," Daniel said. He stood up slowly and looked around at his crew. 12 men and women, all wearing the blue uniforms of Earth's space fleet. They had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. 3 months of cold space food, recycled air, and the same worried faces every day. The Endeavor was not a big ship. It was a simple exploration vessel, built for science missions and first contact situations. It had no heavy weapons, no strong shields. If something went wrong here, they would have no way to fight back. "Take us in," Daniel ordered. Nice and slow. The ship moved forward. As they got closer, Daniel could see hundreds of other ships around the station. Some were small like the Endeavor. Others were massive warships with guns that could destroy a planet. He counted ships from at least 20 different species. All of them were here to watch what would happen to humanity. 6 months ago, the Endeavor had made a terrible mistake. During a mapping mission, they had crossed into space that belonged to 2 alien empires at the same time. The Valorian Empire and the Drashan Confederacy both claimed the same star system. By entering that space, humanity had broken the laws of both empires. Now Daniel was here to face the punishment. The docking process took an hour. When the ship finally locked into place, Daniel turned to his crew one last time. "Whatever happens in there, I want you all to know something. You did nothing wrong. I was the captain. I made the call to enter that system. This is my responsibility." "Sir," said young Ensign Peter Grant from the weapons station, "we all knew the risks. We are with you." Daniel nodded but did not smile. He appreciated the loyalty, but he also knew the truth. If he failed today, it would not just be his life that ended. Earth itself could face destruction. He walked to the airlock alone. Katie tried to follow, but he held up his hand. "Stay here. Keep the engines warm. If things go bad, get the crew home." "Daniel." Katie started, but he was already through the door. The station was cold. Not just the temperature, but the feeling of the place. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to swallow light. The floors were smooth and perfectly clean. There were no windows, no decorations, nothing to make the place feel alive. 2 guards waited for him. They were Korath, a species of tall insect-like beings with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. They said nothing. They simply turned and started walking, expecting him to follow. Daniel followed. They walked for what felt like forever through empty halls and down long lifts. Finally, they stopped before a massive door. The door was made of some crystal material that shifted colors as Daniel watched. Blue, then purple, then a deep red like blood. The door opened. The chamber beyond was the largest room Daniel had ever seen. It could have held 100 ships inside with room to spare. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness above. Lights floated in the air like small stars, giving everything a strange glow, and it was full of aliens. Thousands of them sat in rising rows of seats that circled the room. Some were humanoid, with 2 arms and 2 legs like people from Earth. Others were so strange that Daniel could not even understand what he was looking at. There were beings of pure light, creatures that seemed made of liquid, and things that looked like floating rocks with eyes. All of them were staring at him. In the center of the room, a raised platform waited. Daniel walked toward it, his boots making the only sound in the silent chamber. With each step, he felt the weight of alien eyes pressing down on him. He climbed onto the platform and stood straight. He would not show fear. Whatever these beings thought of humanity, he would show them that humans could face their fate with dignity. A voice filled the chamber. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a sound that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly into his mind. Human representative, you stand before the Galactic Tribunal to answer for the crimes of your species. Daniel looked up. Above the platform, a massive shape was forming. It was made of pure energy, white and blue and gold, shifting and changing every moment. This was the High Arbiter, the being who ruled over all disputes between the great empires. I am Commander Daniel Harris of Earth, he said. His voice sounded small in the vast space, but he made sure it did not shake. I am ready to hear the charges. Your vessel entered the disputed zone between the Valorian Empire and the Drashan Confederacy, the High Arbiter said. This action has been judged as an act of aggression against both empires. Both have demanded punishment. Daniel had expected this. We meant no aggression. We did not know the space was claimed. Earth is new to the galactic community. We are still learning. Ignorance is not an excuse, the High Arbiter replied. The law is clear. However, the tribunal has decided to offer mercy. You will be given a choice. 2 sections of the floor on either side of the platform began to rise. On the left, a group of aliens with silver skin and violet eyes appeared. They wore white robes and moved with perfect grace. These were the Valorians. On the right, another group emerged. These aliens had green scales that covered their entire bodies, and their golden eyes burned with fierce light. They wore black armor and carried weapons at their sides. These were the Drashan. From each group, 1 alien stepped forward. The Valorian was female, tall and beautiful in a cold way, like a statue made of moonlight. Her silver hair fell to her waist, and her violet eyes showed no emotion at all. The Drashan was also female, shorter but powerfully built. Her scales were a darker green than the others, and a scar ran down the left side of her face. She looked at Daniel with open hatred. These are Lyra of Valoria and Kira of the Drashan Confederacy, the High Arbiter announced. The terms of your choice are as follows. You will select one of these females as your bondmate. The Empire, whose representative you choose, will become humanity's ally. The Empire, whose representative you reject, will declare war on your species. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. He looked at Lyra, whose face remained empty and still. He looked at Kira, whose hands had formed into fists at her sides. You have 1 rotation cycle to make your decision, the High Arbiter continued. Choose wisely, human. The future of your species depends on it. The energy being faded away. The chamber burst into noise as thousands of aliens began talking at once. But Daniel barely heard them. He was looking at the 2 females before him. Neither wanted to be here. Neither had chosen this fate. They were being used as bargaining chips, their lives traded for political power. And now he was expected to use them the same way. No, Daniel thought. There has to be another way. He just had to find it. Daniel returned to the Endeavor with his mind racing. The walk back through the dark halls of the station felt even longer than before. The Korath guards did not speak to him. They simply led him to the airlock and disappeared without a word. Katie was waiting for him inside the ship. Her face was pale and worried. What happened? She asked. We saw the broadcast. The whole galaxy saw it. They want me to choose a wife, Daniel said. The words felt strange in his mouth. One of 2 aliens. And whichever empire I reject will try to destroy Earth. Katie's eyes went wide. That is insane. How can they expect you to make a choice like that? They do not care what I think. They do not care what anyone thinks. Daniel walked past her toward his quarters. Get me everything we have on the Valorians and the Drashan. History, culture, politics, everything. I need to understand what we are dealing with. For the next several hours, Daniel sat alone in his small room reading files on his datapad. The more he learned, the worse he felt. The Valorians were one of the oldest species in the known galaxy. Their empire had existed for over 100,000 years. They had conquered thousands of worlds and absorbed hundreds of other species into their civilization. They valued logic, order, and what they called genetic perfection. To them, emotions were a weakness. Love was a chemical reaction that needed to be controlled. Marriage among Valorians was not about love or choice. It was about creating the best possible offspring to serve the empire. Bondmates were selected by computers based on genetic profiles. If Earth allied with the Valorians, they would gain access to technology that was millions of years more advanced. But the price would be complete cultural change. Within a few generations, humans would have to give up their emotions, their art, their music, everything that made them human. They would become just another absorbed species. Their identity erased from history. The Narration were the opposite in almost every way. Their confederacy was only 10,000 years old, but they had built it through pure military power. They had never lost a war, never retreated from a battle. Their entire society was built around the concept of strength. Among the Narration, weakness was the greatest sin. Children were tested from birth, and those who failed were sent to labor camps or worse. Warriors were the highest class, and every other profession existed only to support them. Bondmates were chosen through combat. The strongest male would fight for the right to claim a female, and the female had no say in the matter. If Earth allied with the Narration, they would gain military protection against all threats. But human children would be forced to serve in Narration armies. Human soldiers would fight and die in wars that had nothing to do with Earth, and those deemed too weak would be cast aside like garbage. Daniel put down the datapad and rubbed his tired eyes. Neither choice was acceptable. Both paths led to the end of humanity as he knew it. A knock came at his door. "Come in," he said. Katie entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Daniel and sat down across from him. "I brought the ship's records from when we entered the disputed zone," she said. "I thought you might want to see exactly what happened." Daniel took the cup, but did not drink. "I remember what happened. I gave the order to enter. I thought the system was unclaimed. That is what I wanted to talk about." Katie pulled out her own datapad and showed him a star map. "Look at this. The disputed zone is not clearly marked in any galactic database. There are no warning beacons, no patrol ships, nothing to tell travelers to stay away." "What are you saying?" "I am saying this whole thing might be a setup." Katie's voice dropped lower. "The Valorians and Narration have been enemies for thousands of years. They have been looking for any excuse to break the current peace. But neither one wants to start a war directly because the tribunal would punish them." Daniel leaned forward. "So they used us instead." "Exactly. A young species, new to galactic politics, stumbles into their disputed zone by accident. Now they have a perfect excuse. Whoever does not get chosen can claim they were insulted and start a war. And it will not be their fault because you made the choice." Daniel felt anger building in his chest. Not at the aliens who had set this trap, but at himself for walking right into it. "There is more," Katie continued. "I did some research on the 2 females, Lyra and Kira. They are not normal representatives." "What do you mean?" "Lyra is a clone. The Valorians created her specifically for situations like this. She has no family, no history, no legal rights under Valorian law. If you choose her and something goes wrong, the Valorians can deny any responsibility. She's disposable to them." Daniel's stomach turned. "And Kira?" "Her family used to be powerful in the Narration Confederacy, but they lost a political fight with the current war chief. Her father was executed. Her brothers were sent to the front lines of a distant war. She is the last one left, and sending her here was basically a death sentence. If you choose her, the war chief gets rid of a rival family's bloodline. If you reject her, he gets to start a war. So neither of them chose to be here, Daniel said quietly. No, they are victims, just like us. Daniel stood up and walked to the small window of his quarters. Outside, he could see the massive station and the ships surrounding it. Somewhere out there, thousands of aliens were waiting to see what he would do. They expected him to play the game by their rules. They expected him to sacrifice one female to save his species. But Daniel had never been good at following other people's rules. I want to meet with them, he said. Katie looked confused. Meet with who? Lyra and Kira, both of them, together. Daniel, that is not how this works. You are supposed to meet with each one separately, evaluate them like products at a market, and then make your choice. I know what I am supposed to do. Daniel turned to face her. But I am not going to treat them like objects. They are people. They have their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own lives that were stolen from them. Before I make any decision, I want to hear what they have to say. Katie shook her head slowly. The tribunal will never allow it. Then I will make them allow it. Daniel moved toward the door. Prepare a formal request to the High Arbiter. Tell them that the human representative demands a private meeting with both potential bondmates at the same time. They will refuse. Maybe. But they want this game to play out. They need me to make a choice. If I refuse to cooperate, their whole plan falls apart. Daniel smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. Let them worry about what I might do. Let them wonder what the human is planning. Katie stood up and followed him out the door. You are taking a big risk. If you make them angry, they might just skip the choice and destroy Earth anyway. They might, Daniel agreed. But I would rather die trying to do the right thing than live knowing I traded someone's freedom for my own survival. He walked to the communications room and began composing his message to the tribunal. As he typed, he could feel something growing inside him. Not fear, though there was plenty of that. Something else. Hope. These aliens had built their entire system on the idea that weaker species would do whatever they were told. They expected humans to follow the rules, accept the punishment, and be grateful for the chance to survive. They had never met a species that would rather fight impossible odds than surrender their principles. They were about to learn what humans were really made of. Asterisk. The response from the tribunal came faster than Daniel expected. His request for a private meeting with both Lyra and Kira was denied. The message said that such a meeting had no place in the established process and would not be allowed. Daniel sent another request. It was denied. Again. He sent a third request, this time adding that he would refuse to make any choice until his demand was met. The tribunal warned him that refusing to follow the process would be seen as an act of defiance against galactic law. Daniel did not care. For 2 days, nothing happened. The Endeavour stayed docked at the station while Daniel waited. His crew grew more nervous with each passing hour. Ships from both the Valorian Empire and the Dracian Confederacy moved into position around the station. Their weapons pointed at each other and at the small human vessel. On the third day, the tribunal finally gave in. A message arrived informing Daniel that his request had been approved. He would be allowed to meet with both females at the same time in a private chamber. No guards would be present inside the room, but the meeting would be limited to 1 hour. Daniel put on his best uniform and walked to the meeting place alone. The chamber was small compared to the great hall where he had first faced the tribunal. It had simple walls of gray metal and soft lighting that came from hidden sources. 3 chairs had been placed in the center of the room, arranged in a triangle so that each person could see the others clearly. Lyra was already there when Daniel arrived. She sat perfectly still in her chair, her silver skin catching the light and her violet eyes fixed on some point in the distance. She did not look at him when he entered. A moment later, the door opened again and Kira walked in. Her green scales seemed darker than before, and the scar on her face stood out sharply against her skin. She looked at Daniel with the same hatred he had seen in the Great Hall. "Sit," Kira said. It was not a request. Daniel sat down. For a long moment, no one spoke. "I asked for this meeting because I need to understand something," Daniel finally said. "I need to know who you really are. Not what your empires want me to see. Not the masks you wear in public. The real you." Kira laughed. It was a harsh sound, full of bitterness. "Why would you care? You are going to choose one of us like picking a pet from a cage. What difference does it make who we really are?" "It makes all the difference in the world," Daniel said quietly. Lyra finally moved. She turned her head slowly and looked at Daniel with those empty violet eyes. "The human speaks as if we have some hidden depth waiting to be discovered. We do not. I am a product of Valorian genetic science, designed to serve a specific purpose. I have no secrets because I have no self." "I do not believe that," Daniel said. "Your beliefs are not relevant." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Tell me something. When you were created, when you first became aware of the world around you, what did you feel?" For a moment, something flickered in Lyra's eyes. A tiny crack in the perfect mask. "Confusion," she said softly. "I did not understand why I existed. I did not understand my purpose. They told me I was the 17th attempt at creating the ideal diplomatic vessel. The previous 16 had all been terminated for various flaws." "Terminated?" "Killed." Lyra's voice remained flat, but her hands tightened slightly in her lap. "I spent my first years trying to be perfect enough to survive. I taught myself to feel nothing, want nothing, need nothing. Because any feeling, any want, any need could be seen as a flaw." Kira had grown quiet during Lyra's words. Some of the anger had faded from her face. "And what about you?" Daniel asked, turning to the Drashan female. "What is your story?" Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice lower than before. "My father was a great warrior. He won 40 battles for the Confederacy. He was loyal, brave, and strong. But he made the mistake of telling the war chief that a certain campaign was foolish. He said it would waste lives for no good reason." She paused. "He was right. The campaign failed. Thousands died. But the war chief did not want to hear that he had been wrong. So he destroyed your family," Daniel said. "Yes, my father was executed for treason. My brothers were sent to fight in battles they could not win. And I was brought here to be given to some alien as a prize." Kira's golden eyes burned with old pain. "I used to be proud of my scales, my heritage, my family name. Now that name is a curse." Daniel looked at both of them. Two females from opposite ends of the galaxy, from cultures that hated each other, who had both been treated as objects by the people who should have protected them. "I am not going to choose between you," he said. Both aliens stared at him. "What do you mean?" Lyra asked. "I mean exactly what I said. I am not going to look at you as options in some political game. I am not going to weigh which empire will be more useful to Earth. That is what they want me to do. That is how their system works. They break people down into pieces and trade those pieces for power." Daniel stood up and walked to the center of the triangle formed by their chairs. "Where I come from, we have a saying. Every person has value, not because of what they can do or who they belong to, but simply because they exist. You are not products. You are not bargaining chips. You are people with your own minds, your own histories, your own futures." "Pretty words," Kira said. "But words will not change our situation. You must choose, or both empires will destroy your world. Maybe, Daniel admitted. But what kind of future would I be buying if I purchased it with someone else's freedom? Earth would survive, but humanity would lose something far more important. We would lose our soul. Lyra tilted her head slightly. I do not understand. Your species faces extinction. Any logical being would do whatever was necessary to prevent that outcome. Then maybe humans are not logical, Daniel said. Or maybe we have a different kind of logic. One that says some things are more important than survival. The hour was almost over. Daniel could feel time running out like sand through his fingers. But before he left, he needed to ask one more question. If you could choose your own fate, he said, looking at both of them, what would you want? Not what your empires want. Not what the tribunal wants. What would you choose for yourselves? Neither female answered immediately. Daniel could see them struggling with the question, fighting against years of training that told them their wants did not matter. Finally, Lyra spoke. I would want to know what it feels like to make my own decisions. To go where I want, do what I want, be who I want. Kira nodded slowly. I would want to restore my family's honor. Not through war or revenge, but by proving that we were more than what they made us. Daniel smiled. Then maybe we can help each other. The door opened. Their time was up, but as Daniel walked back to his ship, he was no longer thinking about impossible choices. He was thinking about impossible solutions, and he was starting to see a way forward. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat in the small library of the Endeavor, surrounded by datapads and old books, searching for something that everyone else had forgotten. Katie found him there in the early morning, his eyes red from lack of sleep and his uniform wrinkled. Have you been here all night? She asked. I found something, Daniel said. He held up one of the datapads with shaking hands. Look at this. The Sanctuary Protocol. Katie took the pad and read the screen. Her eyebrows rose higher with each line. This law is 50,000 years old, she said. Nobody has used it since before the current empires even existed. But it is still valid. The tribunal was built on the foundation of these old laws. They cannot ignore them without destroying their own authority. Katie sat down next to him and read more carefully. It says here that any individual facing unjust treatment can be claimed under sanctuary by another party. The one who claims sanctuary must offer something of equal value in exchange. Exactly. Daniel stood up and began pacing around the small room. The tribunal system works because everyone plays along. They accept the rules. They make the choices they are given. They trade lives and freedom like currency. But the founders of galactic law knew this system could be abused. So they created a way out. But what could you offer that would equal the value of 2 bondmates? Katie asked. You are just one human. You have no wealth, no political power, no military strength. Daniel stopped pacing and pulled a small device from his pocket. Remember the survey we did of Earth before we left? We mapped every mineral deposit, every natural resource, every hidden treasure our planet has. Katie's eyes widened. The dilithium field in Antarctica, the largest deposit of dilithium ever discovered by any species. Enough fuel to power both the Valorian and Drashan fleets for 100 years. Daniel looked at the device in his hand. Earth does not have the technology to extract it yet, but we can give the location to both empires. Let them share it equally. Daniel, that is Earth's most valuable resource. If you give it away, humanity will have nothing to bargain with in the future. We will have our principles, Daniel said. We will have proof that humans do not sacrifice others to save themselves. And we will have 2 allies who chose to stand with us because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. Katie was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. It is a crazy, Plan, she said. I know. It might not work. I know. But it is also the most human thing I have ever heard. Katie stood up and put her hand on Daniel's shoulder. I am with you, Commander. Whatever happens. The rotation cycle ended at noon. Ships from every corner of the galaxy moved into position around the station, their sensors fixed on the great ceremonial chamber. Billions of beings across 100 worlds watched the broadcast, waiting to see what the human would choose. Daniel walked into the chamber alone. The room was even more crowded than before. Every seat was filled with aliens of every shape and size. The air hummed with tension and expectation. In the center of the chamber, the raised platform waited like an executioner's block. Lyra stood on the left side of the platform, wearing the same white robes as before. Her face was empty, but Daniel noticed that her hands were not quite still at her sides. Kira stood on the right side, her black armor polished to a dark shine. Her scars seemed deeper today, as if it had absorbed all the pain of her family's destruction. Above them, the High Arbiter took form. The energy being pulsed with power and ancient authority, filling the upper reaches of the chamber with light. Human representative. The High Arbiter's voice boomed through the room. The time has come. You have had your rotation cycle to consider. Now you must choose. Which female will you take as your bondmate? Which empire will become humanity's ally? Speak now, and let your decision be recorded in the eternal records of the tribunal. Daniel climbed onto the platform. He looked at Lyra. He looked at Kira. Then he turned to face the assembled aliens. I reject the terms of this judgment, he said. The chamber exploded with noise. Voices shouted in 100 languages. The Valorian delegation rose to their feet in anger. The Drashan warriors reached for their weapons. The High Arbiter's energy form flickered and pulsed with confusion. Silence, the High Arbiter commanded, and the noise died away. Human, you cannot reject the tribunal's decree. The law is clear. You must choose or face the consequences. I am not rejecting your law, Daniel said. I am invoking it. I invoke the ancient protocol of sanctuary. Dead silence fell over the chamber. Even the High Arbiter seemed frozen for a moment. The sanctuary protocol, the being finally said. That law has not been used in 50,000 years, but it is still valid. Your own records confirm this. The protocol states that any individual facing unjust treatment may be claimed under sanctuary by another party. The one who claims sanctuary must offer something of equal value in exchange. The High Arbiter's form shifted and twisted. You wish to claim these females under sanctuary? On what grounds do you argue that they face unjust treatment? Daniel pointed at Lyra. This female was created in a laboratory and denied any rights as a person. She has been treated as property from the moment of her birth. She was brought here not as a representative, but as a disposable tool. He pointed at Kira. This female's family was destroyed for political reasons. Her father was murdered for speaking the truth. Her brothers were sent to die in distant wars. She was given to the tribunal as a way to erase her bloodline forever. Daniel turned in a slow circle, meeting the eyes of as many aliens as he could. Neither of these females chose to be here. Neither of them consented to being treated like livestock. Your own founding laws state that all beings have the right to self-determination. These females have been denied that right. Even if your argument has merit, the High Arbiter said, you must offer something of equal value. What could a primitive species like humanity possibly offer? Daniel held up the small device. This contains the location of the largest dilithium deposit in the known galaxy. It lies on Earth, waiting to be extracted. I offer it freely to both the Valorian Empire and the Drashan Confederacy. Let them share it equally. Let them use it to build a future together, instead of tearing each other apart. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Valorian and Drashen delegations leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the device in Daniel's hand. "Dilithium is valuable," the High Arbiter admitted. "But is it equal to the value of 2 bondmates?" Daniel shook his head. "You are asking the wrong question. You are thinking in terms of trade, of exchange, of what you can get from others. That is not what this is about." He looked up at the energy being. "Lyra and Kira are not products with a price tag. They are people. And people cannot be bought or sold. They can only choose for themselves." Daniel turned to the 2 females. "I claim sanctuary for both of you. Not as a trade, not as a bargain, but as an offer. If you accept, you will be free. Free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want, be whoever you want. Earth will welcome you as guests and equals." He paused. "But the choice is yours. Not mine. Not the tribunal's. Yours." The fate of 3 species hung in the silence that followed. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on the 2 females standing on the platform. Lyra had not moved, but something had changed in her violet eyes. A tiny spark of light that had not been there before. Kira's scales had shifted color, the dark green lightening to something softer, something almost hopeful. The High Arbiter spoke first. "This is unprecedented. The Sanctuary Protocol was never intended for situations like this. It was designed to protect individuals from physical harm, not to disrupt political agreements." "With respect," Daniel said, "the protocol does not make that distinction. It protects individuals facing unjust treatment. Nothing is more unjust than being treated as property." The Valorian High Counselor rose from his seat, his silver robes flowing around him like liquid metal. "This is an insult to our empire. The female Lyra belongs to us. She was created by us, for us. You cannot simply take her away." "I am not taking her anywhere," Daniel replied calmly. "I am offering her a choice. Something your empire never did." "Choice is inefficient," the counselor said. "Emotions lead to poor decisions. The Valorian way has brought order and progress to the galaxy for 100,000 years. Your way also created a person and then told her she had no right to exist as herself," Daniel said. "You made her afraid to feel anything because feeling might get her killed. That is not progress. That is cruelty dressed up in logical language." The Drashen war chief stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the platform. "The human speaks of choice and freedom, but his words are empty. In the real world, strength is all that matters." The female Kira was given to the tribunal because she was weak. Her family was weak. The weak do not deserve choices. Kira's hands formed into fists at her sides. Daniel saw the muscles in her neck tighten with barely controlled rage. "Was her father weak when he won 40 battles for your confederacy?" Daniel asked. "Was he weak when he told you the truth about a campaign that would fail? Or was he simply honest, and you could not stand to hear it?" The war chief's eyes narrowed. "You are brave for a creature who has no fleet, no army, no power. Your world could be dust within days if I give the order." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But then you would never get the dilithium. And every species in this chamber would see that the Drashen Confederacy destroys anyone who stands up to them. How long do you think your empire would last, when everyone fears you, but no one respects you?" The war chief's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. Daniel turned to face the 2 females directly. "I have said everything I can say. The rest is up to you. Do you accept sanctuary under Earth's protection? The choice is yours alone." Lyra stepped forward first. Her movements were slow and careful, as if she was learning to walk for the first time. She looked at the Valorian delegation, at the High Counselor who had controlled her entire existence, at the Empire that had created her as a tool and nothing more. Then she spoke. "I accept sanctuary. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. Some of the Valorians gasped. Others simply stared in disbelief. No clone had ever defied the Empire before. No created being had ever claimed the right to choose. "I do not know what freedom means," Lyra continued. "I have never experienced it. But I know what slavery means. I know what it feels like to have no value except what others assign to me. If the human is offering me a chance to discover who I really am, then I will take that chance." She walked across the platform and stood beside Daniel. All eyes turned to Kira. The Drashan female had not moved. Her golden eyes were fixed on the war chief, her scales still shifting with emotion. For a long moment, Daniel thought she might refuse. She had spent her whole life in Drashan society. Even after everything they had done to her family, it was still the only world she knew. Then Kira spoke, and her voice was like fire. "You killed my father for speaking the truth. You sent my brothers to die in battles that could not be won. You brought me here hoping I would fail, hoping I would be rejected, hoping my bloodline would end in shame." She turned to face the war chief directly. "But you made one mistake. You forgot that my father's blood runs in my veins. You forgot that we do not surrender. We do not give up. We find another way." Kira walked across the platform and stood beside Daniel and Lyra. "I accept sanctuary. I choose to be free. And I choose to show the galaxy that the Drashan did not break me. My family's honor will survive through me." The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from 100 worlds were shouting, arguing, demanding answers. The Valorian and Drashan delegations looked ready to start a war right there, in the tribunal hall. But the High Arbiter's voice cut through everything. Silence. The energy being descended closer to the platform, its form pulsing with ancient power. "The human has invoked valid law. The females have made their choice. The terms of the Sanctuary Protocol have been met." The High Arbiter turned to face the Valorian and Drashan delegations. "The matter is settled. The females Lyra and Kira are now under the protection of Earth. Any attack on them will be considered an attack on the tribunal itself. And what of our grievance against humanity?" the war chief demanded. "They still entered our space without permission." Daniel held up the device containing the dilithium location. "This is my answer to your grievance. Take it, share it between your empires. Use it to build something better than war." He tossed the device into the air. It floated there, held by some invisible force, projecting its data for all to see. The Valorian High Counselor looked at the war chief. Ancient enemies, locked in hatred for thousands of years. But both of them could read the numbers on the projection. Both of them could see the value of what was being offered. Greed won over pride. It usually did. "The Valorian Empire accepts this settlement," the High Counselor said. "As does the Drashan Confederacy," the war chief added. Though his voice was bitter, the High Arbiter's form expanded, filling the upper reaches of the chamber with light. "Then it is done. The dispute is resolved. The human representative has found a path that no one expected, a solution that serves all parties without requiring anyone to suffer." Daniel felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Lyra looking at him with wonder in her violet eyes. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "You could have just chosen one of us and saved your people the easy way. Why risk everything for strangers?" Daniel smiled. "Because that is what humans do. We refuse to accept that cruelty is the only option. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to be free." Kira stepped closer, her scales now a warm golden green. "Your species is strange, human. You are weak in body, young in years, small in numbers. But you have something the great empires forgot they ever had." "What is that?" "A heart." As Daniel walked out of the chamber with two former enemies, now turned friends at his side, He knew that the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. They had expected Earth to play by the rules. They had expected humans to sacrifice others for survival. They had expected a small species to bow before the great empires. Instead, they got something they had never encountered before. They got hope. And hope, Daniel knew, was the most powerful force in the universe.